Hey guys, this is Justin. Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're continuing our hashtag AskEck series. We seem to be bringing in some new viewers, some who are confused by the format. So just as a reminder, if you have a question you'd like to see answered in a video like this, leave it down in the comment section and make sure you include the hashtag AskEck. Without that, I have a hard time filtering questions from the rest of the general comments. But if you like this series, also leave a like. I can't filter that way, but it does help. So usually we try to do a couple of questions, one more in-depth, and the first one comes from Indiana Jones, and he notes that some of his comments have been deleted. It's not from me. I don't delete comments almost ever. YouTube has filters. Sometimes they think you're spamming, but regardless, he asks, during the Thrawn campaign, why didn't the Grand Admiral do anything to fix the disaster on Honoghr? Why didn't he bring in the Empire of the Hand against the New Republic? And why did he give Sabayoth so loose of a leash so the Mad Jedi would end up killing General Covell? So there are a lot of questions here, and I think they necessitate a broad discussion of Grand Admiral Thrawn himself. And you have to remember that the Thrawn of the original Thrawn trilogy is very different than the Thrawn which existed at the end of Star Wars Legends. In the Thrawn trilogy, he's written pretty purely as a villain. He's not as outright evil as the Emperor, but his sole goal is to destroy what he calls the Rebellion, i.e. the New Republic, and restore order to the galaxy. Obviously, later works give him a more sympathetic angle. You can argue whether that's good or bad. But Thrawn has always had also several key characteristics. He's great at evaluating enemies, almost supernaturally good, in fact. He's a great long-term planner. We see that in the Thrawn trilogy. He finds all these little pieces which come together as a part of his masterful campaign, and he's a surgeon in battle. However, one thing that I like about the original Thrawn trilogy is that even with all of those qualities, he still makes mistakes. Ironically, probably his greatest mistake is his lack of understanding of Noghri culture. So for those who haven't read the Thrawn trilogy, the Empire, and especially Thrawn, use the Noghri species as essentially highly skilled hitmen. They're much like short Wookiees or really Trandoshans. In fact, when the Yuuzhan Vong are introduced, one of the ways they're shown to be powerful is by killing a Noghri in hand-to-hand combat. Anyway, the Noghri planet of Honoghr suffers a major ecological event in the original novel. It's not fully explained. It's later, I wouldn't call it retconned, but expanded into a crashed vessel during the Clone Wars, polluting the planet. Darth Vader travels to Honoghr, he finds the Noghri, and he basically makes a pact with them. You serve us, essentially give us your honor debt, and the Empire will help you survive on your crappy planet. So Thrawn is fairly brutal with the Noghri. He keeps them under his thumb. He uses them in his campaign against the Skywalkers and Solos specifically. However, Princess Leia, who of course is the daughter of basically Noghri Jesus, Darth Vader, ends up traveling to Honoghr and unravels what's going on. Thrawn's major mistake was underestimating the Noghri as a species and overestimating their degree of loyalty to the Empire. Throughout the trilogy, and especially in the last novel, there are definitely hints that there's something going on. Early on in Book 3, Thrawn even says, I don't yet know what it is, but I know it's there. I can sense it with every communication I have with the Dynasts on Honoghr. And this actually sort of makes the situation worse. The Noghri really value honor. Thrawn starts putting them on key missions, and not great for Imperial Noghri relations. But yeah, Thrawn's blind spot when it comes to the Noghri is arguably his greatest mistake during his entire campaign, and it ends up leading directly to his death at the hands of Rook. And it's just a misunderstanding of their culture, and especially the one key aspect of the story, which is that Leia discovers the true treachery of the Empire, which is that Honoghr was being kept in its decrepit state so that the Empire could force the continual service of the Noghri. They were continually poisoning the planet, and that revelation would be the main one which drove them to change sides. And then for the rest of Star Wars Legends, Leia has the Noghri bodyguards, which is very fun. As for why didn't he bring the Empire of the Hand in, well, that's sort of addressed in some reference books. Thrawn had many assets he didn't use, including other Imperial Splinter factions. The short version is he wanted them to hold territory. If this is something you'd like me to look into more, maybe I can do so, but I believe I've also covered that in a video where I talked about Thrawn almost getting a Super Star Destroyer. As for the issue of Sabayoth, I don't actually think Sabayoth being so mad was a huge issue. The fact is, yes, he needed Sabayoth. Yes, he probably should have had him eliminated, probably right before the final Battle of Bilbringi. But even with the loss of Wayland and the nonsense being done by Sabayoth generally, had they won the Battle of Bilbringi, the Empire and Thrawn's campaign would have been in a fine position. So I think he really just dealt with the nasty side of Sabayoth because he so needed his force coordination to launch the early stages of his campaign. All right, this next question is one not Star Wars lore related, but in regards to these videos. It's asked all the time. How does my editor use a video of a First Order Resurgent class Star Destroyer in the Thrawn's Revenge mod? And Marmar told me that essentially she manually updated the Resurgent to work in the latest version of TR. So this isn't something you can probably do if you're not super familiar with how the mod works like she is, but I mean, really, you can make your own version of whatever mod and play the game that way, though obviously consider the rights of the modders and the asset creators and stuff, especially if you're going to upload your new version of the mod, which you shouldn't do without permission. So for a final question, this is a good one. Lemon Koi asks, when you say the Yuuzhan Vong live outside the Force, could Palpatine still have used his Force lightning and Force storms against him, or would it have been nullified? And the answer is actually within the text itself. So ignoring some of the weirder aspects of the Force with the Yuuzhan Vong, like Vong sense, you have to think of the Yuuzhan Vong as just having a presence outside the Force. Obviously, they still exist in reality, but they cannot be sensed in the Force. You can't, at least usually, grab and pick up a Yuuzhan Vong with the Force, but many powers are still effective against them. If you take a rock and use the Force to throw it at a Yuuzhan Vong, then it's going to be successful. Although the Yuuzhan Vong are squirrely, they might get out of the way. I can't remember if this is the case, but I believe it is. My new Jedi Order reread's been taking 2 years, that there's even a situation where someone pulls the air away from a Yuuzhan Vong warrior as a way to do a Force choke without pinching the neck. As for Force lightning, well, I actually do have a textual reference for that one. In Star by Star, after the death of Anakin, Jaina has a bit of a dark side moment, and she draws on her limited dark sider training from the Young Jedi Knight books and shoots a torrent of Force lightning, and I quote, blasting a hole through the Yuuzhan Vong's chest and hurling him into the rubble pile, smoking and motionless. So yeah, Force lightning does work against the Yuuzhan Vong. You just have to imagine, instead of targeting the Vong, you're targeting the area where they are. And I imagine you could probably do something similar with some forms of telekinesis, so you wouldn't be able to pick a Yuuzhan Vong warrior up, but you could move the ground under them, or you could push sort of a wave of energy at them to push them backwards without actually targeting the Vong themselves. So hope that answers your question, and that's all the time we have for today. If you want your topic addressed in a future video, of course, leave it down below with the hashtag AskEck. By the way, a lot of you guys noticed this, our last Q&A, YouTube was having an issue where it published actually a video across a bunch of my channels with the work in progress sort of draft title instead of the final one. So if you haven't seen the last video, another Q&A, you might want to check it out. That's all I've got. See you soon. Bye-bye.